Hey folks, Steve here with a new video series for a game that I haven't had for a very, very long amount of time, but offers a shorter gameplay experience, so it feels like a fun thing to take a look at in the aftermath of the Grand Dark Valley series that we just finished up here. The game I'm talking about today is 1870, The War Against the Empire, from the Long Century Operations series, published by CSL Games, designed by Ray Weiss, the founder of that publishing company. And as you can imagine, based on the year and the picture of our good friend Bismarck on the front, this is a game on the Franco-Prussian War, though the game uses the term Franco-German War based on some historical analysis reasons. Game's weighted at 7 out of 10 by their scale. Solitaire 8 out of 10, which is good for us since I'm looking at the solitaire. You get 40-some counters, a map and a rule book, and 2 days per turn for what it's representing. 10 miles per hex, corps and armies, blah, 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 blah. So, yeah, you can take a see at the game in action. From like a vassal type of prototype thing. And then we've got the map set out here. It's a smaller map, and I've got it stuck underneath some plexi. I also got the force pull charts, which came with the game, set up over there as well. And presumably some of the units are going to sit over in those boxes as we work our way through it. Now, being a game on the Franco-Prussian War, there are other games that cover this topic. Let's see. We've got, sorry, I should have had these prepared. There's On to Paris, the Franco-Prussian War. There's the Miranda game from some years back that's, I'm pretty sure, out of print now. But this game's sort of in the same vein or scope, while this being a much, bigger, monstery game rendition of it all. It'll be interesting to see how this might compare, but I'll say, the Franco-Prussian War is kind of an interesting war to cover in a war game. I think, you look at it and it's during the Long Century. It's after the Napoleonic period. It is before World War I, sort of in that strange time where things like railroads start to become more important, that rapid fire guns start to become relevant and more commonplace on the battlefield, and it kind of makes for a really interesting kind of combat period. I think most folks are pretty familiar with like the American Civil War during this time frame and are used to that. But yes, there were wars in Europe as well, several, and this one is of particular significance because it is the end of this war that saw Prussia and its German Federation allies forming the German Empire that would go into World War I. And this war is sort of seen, I think, from a historical perspective as like, Prussia and its allies, German allies, went to war, got into a war with France. Prussia beat the crap out of France, and then they declared the German Empire, and history moves on, right? And in reality, yeah, I guess that's still true. That's still sort of true. But, the realities of why the Prussians defeated the French and how they did it is a bit more interesting to talk about because it didn't have to be that way. And ultimately, the French, they didn't lose because of some sort of, it's sort of like this, I don't know what you call it. It's bad history, when people look at, because of the French surrender in World War II, that the French are just these, terrible, war wagers or something, like this really stupid stereotypes that really don't make sense when you look at all of the history of France. To acknowledge that even in this war, some severe circumstances arose that meant that the main French army, were defeated and surrounded and had to surrender to the Prussians, absolutely. And the Prussians, took advantage of particular situations to cause that to occur. But it wasn't because, the French weren't good at fighting or that they weren't, competent. It was that their leadership in the most important moments of this war made some poor decisions, essentially, and the Prussians were able to make very good decisions and exploited the failings of the French, and that caused a war to functionally be over within a few months. I mean, if you look at if you go look up on Wikipedia, right, this war lasts about a year. But most of the actual fighting that mattered, that determined the end state of the war, really happened in like the first half of that year. And this game appears to cover really those most critical months. The turn track runs from August to September, the beginning of September. Each turn's only a few days, so it's really, this game 1870 is really zoomed in to that critical first month where the French army was basically defeated. The head was cut off the dragon, so to speak, and the French could do nothing but basically lose the war from that point. So it'll be interesting to see, how this game portrays that. And, I can tell you already, it's sort of doing the smart thing. The map covers, and I'll zoom in a little bit so you can appreciate this better. It might be a little hard to read because of the white background, but there's Paris, right? You can see the confluence of all these different rail lines coming into Paris. Over here are the important regions, like Metz and, let's see, Longwy and Verdun, Sedan, and then further on over here, there are just a couple of forts that are owned by the Prussians and Germans proper, like, let's see, what do we have here on the east side of the map? Mons, Landau, Ronstadt. And, a Franco-Prussian war game, probably makes the observation that, most of the fighting is going to be done in France, so the map needs to show France proper, not maybe as much as Germany, or what would become Germany. And this looks like the game follows that design idea fairly well. Now, I'll say, in terms of the components, the map was a fine, sturdy paper map, a sturdier paper than most paper maps, but I still needed to put plexi down to keep it flat because it was bent a certain way. The components in general seem pretty fine, and I think there's some advantage in having this as a print-on-demand game. So I think every time you order a CSL game, the game is printed to your order. So it makes the inclusion of errata really nice. Now, my copy is a fresh copy. I think there are some very, very minor errata that has been pointed out on Board Game Geek by Ray, the designer and publisher. And I need to go, mark my rule book up a little bit just to ensure that I have that errata accounted for. But I'm going to, right out of the gate, make a suggestion to Ray. Ray, if you're watching this, and I know that you can make this change because of a print-on-demand. You can, update the files. The counters here I've got, and these are really, interesting quality counters. It's kind of hard to describe them. I've got them sort of bagged off, the French and the Germans, and then administrative counters here. The counters that were punched out from the, when I punched them out, that they came out pretty easy. They were attached via two, sprues, and the counters are nice and thick. They have kind of this weird, grainy texture on the actual sides. They're not smooth necessarily, but the counters certainly do their job. They do, what you're going to expect them to do. We'll see that when I get playing. But from a user experience aesthetic standpoint, there is one thing just right away I have to call it out because it is just a pain to deal with, is that when you look at really any of these counters, I'll use this as an example. These French counters, you see the French RP1 is in red text, and a standard unit, or a standard strength point counter on the back. I'm not sure if I'm going to get this to focus properly. You can see the word up here, it's disrupted in red. Okay, so red text on blue background is not good from a user experience perspective. Now, I'm not going to act like I'm a super expert here. I did take some classes once upon a time on user experience and dealing with color palettes and how the eye is attracted to white color. Principally, the lighter the color is, the more your eye is attracted to it, because eyes are naturally attracted to light. But when you have contrasting colors like red and blue, having red inset in blue is harder to read and is more of an eyesore. And so, my recommendation would maybe be to modify these so that instead of it being red disrupted, you change it to white text. I don't think the red really does anything particular here to help the readability. It didn't need to be red. It would be much better to have that text be white. And in fact, if you're going to have a colored background at all, very typically you want to use white as your text color wherever possible, right? And in fact, even though websites and Word documents and everything, I'm off on a tangent here, but I think it's important to point out, we're stuck in a white background, black text paradigm because we're translating from the historical print model. So newspapers, documents, when we print them, it was white parchment and dark ink. And so we use that even in the digital realm. But for your eyes, in terms of readability, it is actually better to have a dark background like black or a deeper color with white text, because your eyes can focus on the words more than having your eyes drawn away from the words onto a white background. I don't know why I'm talking so much about this. It's just a very specific thing to be thinking about when you're designing counters, and I think in this case, I would just recommend that the change be made to make that a little bit more readable. Otherwise, things are looking fine. I'm going to have to take a closer look and get the game set up here, but I just wanted to do a little bit of an intro for this. I have the rule book here. The rule book's not very long. It's just 15 pages. There's some designer notes I'm going to read. I think this is going to be probably a not terribly complicated game. This is looking like a pretty typical 2-column format of rules. It's going to be talking about marching, combat. We'll have to take a look and learn what all the specific rules are around this. But we'll look to do the setup here in a moment. I'll come back on camera and we'll probably set up the game here. And I'll try my very level best to get familiar with the rules and explain along the way. So we'll be right back. Before I get too much farther into things, I thought I'd point out a few extra details as it relates to counter design. This is just a fun opportunity to talk about it. If these counters were a lighter blue, like a light, I guess you just call it light blue, right? Yeah, I'm not sure how I can explain maybe the blue of the rivers on the map. I just dropped some counters. If they were lighter color, then the deeper red that's used to denote disrupted or other colors like that would be fine. If you look at, counters like from World in Flames, that, there's sort of, I don't know how I would explain it. The darker your color, the darker the color of your counter, the lighter the text should be, right? And the lighter that your counter color is, the darker your text can be, right? That's one way to look at it. And so I want to point that in case someone was just watching the previous section and was saying, well, what about the inverse? Yeah, I mean, if you have a very light color counter, the darker text will look fine and be readably fine. If you are having a darker counter color like these, this is sort of a deeper, darker blue, then the darker text works out okay. But if you're going to do color like that, you really need it to be lighter so it sticks out and is more refined to read. Okay, so I know this question will come up, and so I'm going to answer it early rather than wait for it. You might be wondering, okay, Steve, you're going to play this. Are you reading any books that are about the Franco-Prussian War? Well, no. Not right now, because I'm in the middle of another book that's not related to history, and I need to kind of finish that out and do some stuff for it for other purposes. But I do have some books by an author about the Franco-Prussian War that I've had for a while. I have these 2 books by Quentin Berry, Franco-Prussian War, 70 to 71, The Campaign of Sedan, Helmuth von Moltke and the Overthrow of the Second Empire, and then its second volume, After Sedan, The Defeat of the Government of National Defense. This is obviously sort of after the critical component of the war, but it is oddly thicker than the other. I'm not sure how these read. I can't recommend them yet because I haven't really read them. I do have a book by the same author that I've read some of, which is his book, The Road to Königgrätz, which is his book about the Austro-Prussian War. and I got like almost 100 pages in, and then I had to switch gears, and I never got back to it. So those are books that I do have on the topic, but I can't say that I've been able to read them. Maybe playing this game will inspire me to get back into these particular books when I next am able to. And probably something to point out, again, this is a game kind of showing the rise of Prussia into Germany, and just a few years prior, the Prussians had fought their war against Austria in the 1866 war, the Austro-Prussian War. And what's funny about that war too, and this is sort of like it builds up this mythology around the German army, is like, hey, in the War of 1866, they call that the 7 Weeks War because the Prussians won. The war lasted about 7 weeks, and they defeated the Austrians. The historically speaking, was the strongest German power. Prussia was always sort of there and was growing in power and professionalism and territory or whatever, but it wasn't until that war where it was like, hey, I guess, you have Frederick the Great and the 7 Years' War, but it was really, in terms of defining who was the controlling German power, the ultimate German power, it was the War of 1866 that finally decided that. And said, okay, it's Prussia now. Prussia defeated Austria, they defeated them quickly, and they brought the rest of the German states into their sort of sphere of influence. And so, that war was 7 weeks. This war, in principle, was really sort of, the main events were over within a few months. And so it's just kind of interesting that you have these back-to-back, wars where Prussia does extremely well, and does extremely well in a very short amount of time to bring the war to a conclusion that is beneficial to them. So, I don't know, just kind of interesting to look at that. And I do have a game on 1866. It's the card-driven game from Compass Games. I haven't spent a whole lot of time with that, and maybe we'll look at it in the future, but being card-driven, it's harder to do solitaire videos of. So, anyway, I just wanted to put some of that in because I knew these questions were going to come up from the viewers. So there you go, guys. If you've read those books and you want to let me know what you think of them, put that in the comments down below, let me know. Eventually I'll read them, and maybe I'll point out what I like or don't like about them when the day comes. But anyway, I'm going to get back to the game proper here in just a second. Okay, so starting to look at the setup, I'm still working my way through the rules, and I'm seeing some interesting chrome around the chassepot rifles that the French had, which makes entering and leaving zones of control projected by the French potentially harmful, which I like. That's cool. I was also seeing how in the administrative phase there are replacement points that each side gets, and on the whole it seems like the Germans have a much more efficient use of those replacement points, and overall have some advantages there to what they can project into the French country, just in terms of drawing supply and stuff like that. So so far so good. I'm seeing some stuff that it makes sense. There's a little bit of chrome there, helps you appreciate the advantages that the French did have with their chassepot rifle, and so far mostly so good. Now I started doing setup, and this is where things are starting to get a little bothersome. So with the setup, basically there are army counters, there are corps counters, and these are HQ, and they're set up to basically have like a certain number of strength points with that headquarters in certain hexes it's set up. So the French set up, within their borders, there's some guys in the south, kind of near Freiburg, and they've got some a smaller number of forces there, though the vast majority are situated here, all through here, and then there is our good friend Napoleon III, who is, I think it's Napoleon III, yes it is, holed up in Metz with a fairly large army. Now I had the option of putting some of those units adjacent to Metz, and just for now, and I may change this before I start playing, I put it in just Metz for now, because I just want to get guys on the board and sort of get the game situated as I start to finish reading the rules and start getting the game going. And there's a couple of things where it's like, okay, you got the starting replacement points, and then you've got some units that are in the force pool. The French have the 12th CR, or CR12 and CR13 in their force pool, which is situated over here, and then I have the extra strength points not used just there, and I'm guessing that I can use the strength points like change, because some of them were specifying 8 strength points, 3 strength points. Sometimes I could do that with a counter that said 3. Sometimes I was doing that with a 2 and a 1, or for 8, 5 and a 3, or 4 and a 4, whatever. And what I suspect I may end up having issues with is ensuring that all the units can get on the board counted correctly and in the denominations that we need. For the French, it wasn't so bad. And we still have a number of unused counters, so we should be able to, via some mechanism, get what we need on the board based on losses or improvements, new units added. It's just what I'm afraid I'm going to have to do is like lift up each stack and find the change and make sure I don't accidentally, leave some there that got transferred. And I'm a little worried about that, knowing that this game came on a single sheet. It had to hold, all the administrative counters, all the core counters, and then the strength point denominations, which again, I don't know. They did what they could, and for the French, again, not a big deal. But I think I'm going to have some issues here as the Germans. Now, there's some setup errata that I marked in my book with pen. So the first corps is not, the German first corps is not in the force pool. It's actually with the First Army, so you can mark that off. And then they make reference to the 1B and 2B. Well, the counters actually say, like, I think it's like, I'm not sure if it's going to focus. Use the number 1. That's just a type error, and I think that 1B and 2B being, 1B and 11B functionally being, Roman numeral 1B and Roman numeral 2B. I think that's fine. I think what's screwing me up somewhat in this game is that the setup rules use Roman numerals broadly for corps, so like 3 corps, 4th corps. But the counters themselves actually use the Arabic numbering, the numbers that we see as normal. I'm not sure if this is going to focus, but you see the number 4, and that's the corps. So it's sort of this like, in the future, I would ask that this be clarified a little bit, just to help, because it really is like I have to make sure I'm looking at the right units, and I think I've found a problem, further errata for the setup, and maybe I'm not sure. So let's just take a look. Here are all the core things that matter. So the game rules state that the force pool, the headquarters in the force pool are the 1st CD and the 4th Army, which I have put over there on the force pool chart. Relatively straightforward. So when things die or remove, they'll go over there. No big deal. So for the setup, I had most of this set up, and then I had a little bit of worry that what I had set up was incorrect. And so, and I was having issues getting the right denominations set up for the Germans. So this is my concern, is that I'm not going to be able to set it up well, and I'm going to have to use some sort of substitute unit from another game or something to make sure I can get what I need. It's a bunch of math working out, what's the most efficient way to get all these pieces on the board. And maybe I wasn't doing it well the first time I tried. But the first paragraph is, the 1st Army, so right there, has 12 strength points. I'm going to ignore strength points for now, but they have 12. 1st Corps is going to have 8. The 7th Corps is going to have 8, and then the 8th Corps is going to have 8, and they're going to be all in a hex specified or an adjacent. So I can spread them out, I can keep them all together, but all said and done, that's 36 strength points. Pretty good, right? 36 strength points. Now, if I put them all in one hex, I could use a bunch of 10 counters and then a 6, and maybe that would work. But that's, again, playing the strength point denomination game. Now, the second paragraph, the second set of 3, has the 2nd Army, the 3rd Corps, the 4th Corps, the GD Corps, it's Guard Corps, the 9th Corps, the 10th Corps, the 12th S Corps, which is here, 12 with an S, and then we have the 5 CD, and the 6 CD. And those are cavalry divisions. So the 5th Cavalry Division, 6th Cavalry Division. Okay, so far so good, right? That's what we need. We've got those counters. Fair enough. Then we have the 3rd Army. And this is the 3rd set. We have 3rd Army, okay. We've got the 5th Corps, yep. We need the 11th Corps, the X, it's X and I, so that's 11. The 11th Corps. I do not have an 11th Corps. There is not one. There's a 2 Corps that's not used or specified anywhere. There's also a 3rd Cavalry Division Corps that's not specified anywhere, but we'll skip past that for a moment. There's the 1B Corps, okay. We've got the, we'll say 2nd B Corps, so that's here, right. We have the Wood Corps, the Baden Corps, and then the 4th Cavalry Division. So, what is screwed up here, right? Well, the rules have a setup for 11th Corps, but there is no 11th Corps. If you flip the 2B, it's got an 11, but that's really maybe meant to be the 2. I don't know. There's it's either this counter has errata or something is up, and maybe this was meant to be the 2nd Corps, not the 11th Corps written in the rules. So I could just say I'm going to substitute the 2nd Corps for the 11th Corps against the setup. But this is either errata or something needs to be resolved here. So Ray, if you're watching, we need errata for that. And then the game does not specify what we should do with our 3rd Cavalry Division. And I guess I suspect, or I'm guessing, unless there's a special rule in here that I haven't seen yet, I guess that's entirely possible. I am going to put this guy on the turn track, or not the turn track, the force pool. Because as far as I know, he's not supposed to be set up anywhere. If he is, it needs to be called out, and right now it is not. So that could be maybe in the 1st Army group, it could be in the 2nd or the 3rd. So that's the question, right? We have an extra Corps HQ that we don't know what to do with, probably in the force pool. We're missing an 11th Corps that is called out for setup, but we have a 2nd Corps headquarters that isn't specified to go anywhere, and I'm guessing that's the missing link here. But again, this 2nd B Corps on the back, it doesn't say 11B or IIB. It says 11. So that could be where the confusion's coming in, and there's some mistranslation between the Roman numerals, the letters with the actual numbers, and the numbers with a B after them. There's something mixed up here, and if the rule book had the counters in the rule book been consistent with one another, I think this confusion very likely would have been avoided. But basically, I've got a conundrum here, and I cannot complete my setup until I get that resolved somehow. I have to decide what I want to do there. But basically, then I would set up in certain locations here, here, and along here with the unit strength point denominations. Again, I think I have to figure out what those denominations are going to be. I need to try it again because I tried it and I sort of ran out of the change of what I needed, but I probably wasn't doing it the most efficient way possible. So I will need to do that. I'll need to figure that out. But yeah, as it stands, I'm still trying to do setup, trying to read the rules and understand how things are going. I'm only partway through the rules, like halfway through the rules. But maybe that's all we'll cover here in this video today. So this is just, hey, introduction to 1870, some really basic, intro for the game. I'm looking at these forts. The forts have fort values. That's going to be how hard they are to take, or it's going to be their victory points probably. I have to look to see where the victory points start at. I suspect maybe 10. I don't know. I have to double check and look at look at the rules some more. So, yeah, Ray, if you're watching, could use some guidance on that, on the setup information that looks to still have some errata. Maybe all that's been fixed and your control files, and you just need to update the Board Game Geek forum post. I don't know. So we'll keep to look. Yeah, we'll keep on looking at this one, guys. In some future videos, I'm going to have this as my physical game. I might start out a Vassal game and play something else alongside now that we're out of the Dark Valley stuff. We'll see. So we'll see you in the next one, guys. Take care. Keep on gaming.